People will often ask me, why should I use Illustrator? And I believe that I get that question because Illustrator suffers from somewhat of an identity crisis. And by that I mean, if you look at some of the other applications that designers use, be it Photoshop or InDesign, it's very easy to define what those applications do. For example, you can very easily say that InDesign is a page layout tool, or you could say that Photoshop is an image editing application. However, with Illustrator, it becomes more difficult to define a specific word, and you'll find that people say, well, Illustrator is a vector graphics application. And if you're not comfortable or even know what a vector is, then that doesn't really define or explain what it is Illustrator does. And the truth is that Illustrator is used by a variety of different people. For example, graphic designers, illustrators, animators, interface or web designers, fashion or apparel designers, package designers, production or pre-press artists, video professionals. I mean, the list goes on the kinds of people that all use Illustrator. And they use it for a variety of different tasks. A really good way to kind of get a grasp or an idea of the kinds of files that Illustrator does work with is to take a look at some of the sample files that actually come with Illustrator. And if you go to your Illustrator folder, which is actually in your Applications folder on a Mac, over here I have Applications and then Adobe Illustrator CS3, or if you're on a Windows machine, you'd find it in your Program Files in your Adobe Illustrator CS3 folder. There's something there called Cool Extras, which contains a folder called Sample Files. And in there's something called Sample Art that has a variety of different Illustrator files. And I have some of them here open on my screen, and I want to kind of go through a few of these with you so that you can get a better idea or an understanding of the kind of artwork that you do inside of Illustrator, and more importantly, why designers choose to use Illustrator for these kinds of designs. For example, you see here this particular illustration, which actually started out as a sketch on a piece of paper and then traced into Photoshop. Notice that this is still made up of pixels, and we'll talk more about something called pixels a little bit later on. But we have here a particular graphic that's made up of pixels. And if I kind of move on over here to this particular part of the graphic, you'll see that it's actually been converted into Illustrator's very sharp and clean vectors. And again, we'll talk more about what that means as well. And then once you do that inside of your illustration, you can very easily go ahead and color those in to your heart's content and modify and work with those colors. In fact, that's one of the reasons why designers use Illustrator, because you have the ability to edit your files very easily by changing colors, by changing or modifying the shapes of these particular graphics. And then you have the ability to really zoom in or scale to any particular percentage that you want to and never lose any quality or detail in your illustrations. And this is very important, especially when you have graphics that are either used on a website, but those same graphics are also used for print purposes in a brochure, in a very high-end print brochure. Or maybe those graphics are being scaled to make a banner or, to be painted on the side of a stadium or an arena during a sporting event. I mean, you create graphics in a way that they're scalable to any size and for any use that you might want to use them for. Same thing also if you might want to use them, for example, in video. So another example here also of why you might use Illustrator. Here's a sample. This file is called Flower. And again, that's located in the Sample Files folder. You could see here that this looks very photographic in nature. I mean, unlike what some people might think of Illustrator being an application that creates just logos, but this looks very photographic. However, this is really made up of mathematical vector paths, which again, we'll talk about and define those in a few moments. However, like I said, Illustrator has the ability to create these kinds of graphics, and the benefit is that you can scale this virtually to any size and very easily modify the colors in them as well. A couple other examples. Again, this is something that looks very photographic in nature, yet is built out of vectors, which means that they're scalable and editable. Another example of when people use Illustrator is, for example, package designers like the ability to create designs and then have multiple iterations of those designs. And then you want to be able to experiment with colors, with shapes, and it's very easy to do that inside of Illustrator. So this is, again, another example of where the benefits of Illustrator really, really kind of reap a very large amount of rewards because the designer doesn't have any limits to what they're working with. There's no worry about resolution or working with photographic content. You can really combine just about anything that you might need and get that look that you're looking for very easily here inside of Illustrator. So now that we have an idea of why you'd want to use Illustrator, let's take a look in the next movie and find out exactly what a vector is.